Welcome to Passionate Reply, and welcome to Great Albums. Today, I'll be looking at the somewhat rough start of one of the most iconic bands in the history of electronic music, Depeche Mode, and their 1981 debut, Speak and Spell. While Depeche Mode are certainly a beloved band, many of their fans actively revile Speak and Spell. What's wrong with it? Well, it has songs that sound like this.
When I'm with you, baby, I go out of my head, and I just can't get enough, and I just can't get enough. All the things you do to me and everything you said, I just can't get enough, I just can't get enough. We slip and slide as we fall in love, and I just can't seem to get enough.
Just Can't Get Enough isn't exactly the kind of song Depeche Mode are associated with, though it did make an entry in the charts and remains fairly well known today, largely thanks to its use in advertising. The band's classic run, spanning roughly from the mid-80s to the mid-90s, saw them achieve substantial mainstream adulation as a pop act peddling dark and gothic themes and maintaining a substantial electronic element to their music without ever becoming inaccessible to rock listeners. They were even rock and roll enough to consistently break America, which is no small feat for essentially a synth-pop band from England. That synth-pop heritage dominates the sonic palette of Speak and Spell, and it's hard to imagine a die-hard rock fan vibing with upbeat, almost saccharine pop ditties like What's Your Name? Of course, What's Your Name has another big problem besides favoring bright, chirping synth riffs over the guitar-based chug of tracks like Personal Jesus. Its seemingly homoerotic lyrics might be said to constitute the first instance of Depeche Mode engaging in what we might call musical queerbaiting. Thumbing their noses at norms of sexuality and gender presentation have earned the band a substantial queer following throughout their career, but it's not such a smart move if you're trying to attract macho rock listeners and get yourself into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Part of the reason why Depeche Mode were ultimately able to do those things later in their career is that they had a pretty handy scapegoat, Vince Clarke. Clarke was a founding member of the band and as the chief songwriter for all but 2 tracks on Speak and Spell, he was unequivocally the creative force driving the album. Conveniently enough, Clarke not only departed from Depeche Mode immediately after this first album, but went on to serve as an integral member of 2 unequivocally poppy duos, Yazoo and Erasure. But as easy it is to simply blame Vince Clarke's interest in cheerful pop for the apparent failures of Speak and Spell, this hypothesis doesn't hold up. Some Clarke penned numbers, like Puppets, are at least as gloomy as anything from the mind of Martin L. Gore, who took over songwriting duties on every subsequent Depeche Mode LP.
Say
Puppets is pretty far from a feel-good song. Those fairly bright synths remain, but here they feel more like a tense crescendo of violins as something goes poorly in a horror movie, and a serrated synth stab answers them from below. Dave Gahan's semi-whispered delivery of the vocals, which narrate the perspective of a manipulative and controlling partner, add even more to its sinister ambiance. Given only a minor aesthetic facelift, Puppets could fit just fine onto most other Depeche Mode albums, even if Clarke did write it. I actually think the softer, poppier touches this track does have serve it well and make it feel a bit insidious, like a lover who seems lovable and charming at first before revealing their abusive tendencies over time. Another track that really benefits from creating tension between pop fluff and things macabre is the striking "I Sometimes Wish I Was Dead."
New sound all around, you can hear it too. Getting hot, never stop, just for me and you. Playing on my radio and saying that you have to go. New day, turn away, wipe away the tear. A new night, feel right, knowing that you're here. Dancing with you all the time, and don't you think that it's a crime?
I Sometimes Wish I Was Dead features an almost gratingly toy-like synth riff that reminds me a bit of those custom cell phone ringtones from the noughties. Its lyrics are also almost painfully chipper, at least at first, as is Gahan's infantile delivery of them, but there seems to be some irony there. While that provocative title doesn't actually appear, the song seems to be obliquely telling a story of someone dealing with a breakup, albeit cloaked in this eerily sunny music. International editions of Speak and Spell would remove this track in favor of the non-album A-side Dreaming of Me, presumably targeting it for its inflammatory title and short runtime of just over 2 minutes. I Sometimes Wish I Was Dead is a powerful reminder that just because something has a shiny pop veneer doesn't mean it's disposable or that it lacks an artistic complexity. Still, if you're in the market for something that feels more like classic Depeche Mode, Speak and Spell can deliver on that front as well. Look no further than Gore's contributions to the album, such as Tora Tora Tora. With its frantic refrain and troubling themes of nuclear holocaust, Tora 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 feels more like Depeche Mode's classic run than just about anything else on Speak and Spell, prefiguring iconic tracks like Leave in Silence and People Are People quite well. Speak and Spell's cover is certainly strange and a bit opaque, showing some sort of bird in its nest from a very low angle. The background is almost entirely a lurid, artificial-looking pinkish red with no other recognizable figures to ground this landscape in reality. Between the chaotic textures of the nest and the surreal emptiness of the scene, it comes across as a sort of nightmare world, albeit one populated by only this fairly non-threatening creature that we know of. If we look closely at that bird, we can start to see what looks like a transparent veil covering its neck and head. I like to interpret this image as a representation of the natural world destroyed by human callousness. An animal suffocates under a sheet of plastic while the sky behind it glows red with bombs raining from the sky, as in Tora Tora Tora. Despite the title, you won't hear any samples of the titular toy on Speak and Spell, though Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark would famously incorporate some on their album Dazzle Ships a few years later. The title Speak and Spell would seem to suggest the album's light, playful tone and sense of pop novelty. A speak and spell is of course a fun and entertaining toy which repeats the same handful of things over and over, as a pop song might be played ad infinitum on the radio. Perhaps the way the songs sneak a darker emotional undercurrent past their listeners is parallel to how the toy covertly educates children in basic spelling, while also being amusing to fool around with. After Speak and Spell, it took several more years for Depeche Mode to really find their footing and launch into that classic period of theirs where they released most of their best-loved material. Despite the absence of Vince Clarke, their sophomore LP, A Broken Frame, is stylistically rather similar to Speak and Spell, and pairs somber tracks like The Sun and the Rainfall and My Secret Garden with some very upbeat ones like The Meaning of Love. If the fact that Clarke could write puppets didn't sell you on my assertion that he isn't the singular problem with Speak and Spell, the fact that Martin Gore wrote The Meaning of Love should serve as proof that the desire to make catchy pop tunes didn't rest solely on any one person's shoulders.
Noted down all my observations, spent an evening watching television. Still I couldn't say with precision. No, it's a feeling and it comes from above. But what's the meaning of love? The meaning of love. Tell me the meaning of love. From the notes that I've made so far, love seems something like one in a sky. Well, I could be wrong, I'm just not sure, you see. I've never been in love before. Never been in love before. Love before.
My favorite track from Speak and Spell is the opener, New Life. New Life was also released as a single and made substantial headway in the charts, though it doesn't seem quite as well remembered as Just Can't Get Enough. Like I Sometimes Wish I Was Dead, New Life is almost disgustingly catchy and hooky, but hides some surprisingly dark lyrics. But I'll freely admit that I don't particularly have some sophisticated, intellectually justified reason for liking this song the most, besides just thinking it's a real toe tapper. While I've gone to great lengths to dispel the idea that Speak and Spell is nothing but cheerful pop, I'd also like to point out that simply being cheerful pop isn't exactly a musical sin. Whether you like it or not, it's certainly far from easy to write a great pop song that stands the test of time, the way tracks like New Life and Just Can't Get Enough have, and simply pointing out that they're not as morose as later Depeche Mode songs isn't a worthwhile criticism of them. While I enjoy a lot of more gothic music myself, I think a work of art that elicits the emotion of joy has as much of a shot at being a great album as one that wants to make us angry, sad, or afraid. On that note, I've reached the end of my video. As always, thanks for listening.
It's the same as before, so the question answers nowhere. Complicating, circulating.